Fawlty Towers, which is part of the reason we are here today, is
what was that?
Fawlty Towers. It's a TV show.
Oh, yeah. I did that.
Debuted in 1975.
I talked to Graham Chapman through a medium. She said to me, "Oh, he's waving a bird at me." And I said, "A bird?" And she says, "Yes, I think it's a parrot."
When people are heckling in the crowd, notice Peter Kay particularly recently is getting really annoyed.
Well, what I want to say to them is, look, I'm quite good at this comedy thing, and I spend a lot of time writing it and then rehearsing it and performing it. What do you really think your chances of coming up something better than mine? Life of Brian is now rated in these big surveys, international film critics, something like the 10th funniest film ever made.
Yeah.
We could not get $3 million to make it. Every Hollywood studio passed on it. What is kind of funny is funny.
Yes.
And it doesn't matter what the setting is if it's funny. And it's classic fast.
Virgin Radio.
Our guest today, friends, left home to join Monty Python's Flying Circus before taking over as owner-manager of Fawlty Towers. Since then, he has cemented his reputation as one of comedy's most iconic practitioners. I'm a fan of the man, Mr. John Cleese. Welcome to the top of the tower. Lovely to see you.
And you talk a language called Fim.
And you'll explain that.
It's fast Irish mutter. Do you have any idea how fast you speak?
I do. I've been told this.
Yes.
But I think mutter might be a bit strong.
No, I had an Irish friend and I always accused her of Fim. Fast Irish mutter.
Well, as long as the F is for fast, I'm happy enough.
That's all right.
Anything else could have turned into an insult,
I can do this nonsense too.
I know. John, we met once before. I was presenting the Late Late Show. I had taken over from Pat, who had taken over from Gay Byrne, and you sat down and you said, "Are you gay?" And I said, "No, that's the other guy."
That was a good joke, wasn't it?
Good one.
Very good. Do you know Gay Byrne? I have to tell you, I think he was the number one interviewer.
Yeah.
Dick Cavett in America.
Yes, a classic.
They were sort of first equal interviewers.
Yeah. Well, Dick Cavett as well brought it kind of took it out of the kind of wah 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 and actually had a conversation with
That's
you.
right.
I remember we spoke before because my late father was a psychiatrist.
Oh.
And I think that's a road you would have gone down once upon a time.
I could have done. I think I didn't. I think I would have been an academic psychologist, rather than being around these miserable, unhappy people. My favourite joke about psychiatrists is somebody comes up from one at a party and finds he's a psychiatrist. He says, "But how do you manage? I mean, every day, all the time, every hour, someone's in there because they're unhappy and they're miserable and they're having awful problems. And how do you cope listening to all this?" And the psychiatrist said, "Who listens?"
It is truth, isn't it?
Yeah, well, I think so.
So what was the psychology part that you were interested in? Is that just people?
I've always been
interested
in, from a very, very early stage, I was interested in psychology without quite knowing what it was.
Yeah.
And in those days, the BBC used to have some extraordinarily good programs about psychology.
Yeah.
I saw someone... I'd never forget this. He was hypnotized by the psychologist and then said, "Leave the room now. When you come back in, I want you to go over to that vase of flowers, take the flowers off, and pour the water on the floor."
Yes.
And the guy did exactly that.
Yes.
And then the psychiatrist said to him, "Why did you do that?" And it was quite clear that the guy didn't know.
Yes.
But he said, "Well, I thought I saw a bit of smoke, and I thought somebody maybe dropped a cigarette ash there, so I thought I'd better put it out." So and then I saw rationalization, people making up completely false reasons to explain what they'd done and fooling themselves in the process. And I was about 15, and after that I thought, this is interesting, and I wanted to study it, but I went into the biology stream at school.
Yes.
And the teaching was so terrible that I left after a term, went to physics, got into Cambridge on physics and maths.
Yes.
And then thought, this is not going to work. The other people coming to Cambridge to study science are actually interested in it, which gives them an unfair advantage. So I said, what can I do? And they said, "Well, not much, because you don't have any O-levels." And I said, well, what can I? He said, Economics. I said, pass. And then he said, archaeology and anthropology. Well, if you're from Weston-super-Mare, you don't waste a university education on that sort of rubbish. And the law. And I said, oh, that's all right, because my granddad was a solicitor's clerk.
Yes.
So I was going to be a lawyer, and I only got into the footlights by accident. And then I got into show business, but my reading was always about psychology because I found it so fascinating.
Were you able to apply your interest in psychology then to the absurd in comedy?
Oh, yeah.
You're interested in how psychology works, and you're looking at the way you described that guy pouring the water.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I'd always thought that there were elements of people's behaviour that were terribly funny, but they didn't know how funny they were. I always felt that. So I think the two kind of cross-fed each other.
Yes.
Yeah.
You when you think about the classic joke about class and the three men,
yes.
and he is and I am and they are, I think, my goodness, that's a psychological study of that. That's
absolutely brilliant bit of writing by Marty Feldman and a fellow called John Law.
And how ludicrous class is when you on the face of it.
The really funny thing was that we did a sketch later where we reversed the accents.
Oh, very good.
And there was what was it? The guy in the dock was saying, well, actually, I was frightfully and then they went to the
judge,
to the barrister.
Yes, yeah.
Said, oh, that's all right, but give us a little bit, And then the judge said, oh my dear, and it was extraordinarily funny.
Yeah, of course it was.
Yeah,
but Fawlty Towers, which is part of the reason we are here today, is
what was that?
Fawlty Towers. It's a TV show.
Oh, yeah. I did that.
Debuted in 1975.
Yes. 55 years ago, or whatever it is. I know.
I mean,
1975. We actually did the pilot in December 74. So you believe it's 50 years. I've just been writing a book for the 50th anniversary, which would go out with the TV shows.
Yes.
And it's very strange to think 50 years. And, Ryan, I got sad because almost everybody's dead.
Yeah. I can understand you saying that because I remember interviewing Terry Wogan before he passed away. And strangely, we had a very fun and loving interview. But he said, I'm a little bit, I said, are you okay? He said, I'm a little bit fed up with going to my friends' funerals.
Well, one friend to me said the only time I see my old friends is at other friends' funerals. But it was, I was working through it all the people I love, Bernard Cribbins and Joan Sanderson and Ken Campbell. I mean, these wonderful, Jeffrey Palmer, people I only worked with once, but I just liked them so much. And then they're all dead. And I looked up one of the younger actors, and he'd given up acting and had gone off and qualified something else and died at 53. So I was getting quite depressed because apart from Connie, who's in good health, thank goodness, and Prunella, who's in good health but can't remember anything.
Yes, Sybil and Polly.
They're all gone. Brian Hall, who was so good as the chef, he died a long time ago. He was a cab driver,
And was he before?
Yeah.
I didn't know. And you kind of get wistful, sad.
Yeah, wistful. I think you just miss them.
Yeah.
When you think about it, I think we surf along through life, but sometimes you go quieter inside, and you just miss people, and you suddenly think of someone, how fond you were, how fond I was of Peter Cook or David Hatch or these kind of Graham Chapman.
Yes.
I talked to Graham Chapman through a medium.
When?
I have to tell you, several times, yeah.
And how does that work in practice?
Well, she tells me what he's saying.
And do you lean in? You believe in it?
I don't know how, but it sounds exactly like Graham and talks like Graham. And after all, the woman who's doing this is 50s and teaches kids to drive horses. And I asked him, and she said to me, "Oh, he's waving a bird at me." And I said, "A bird?" And she says, "Yes, I think it's a parrot." I said, "But this is the most famous sketch we ever did together." And then another time she said to me, "Well, he's not with a parrot today. He's waving a monkey." I said, "A monkey? I can't think of any connection with monkey." I said, "Wait a moment. Is he got a sort of ring tail?" "Yes," she said, "he's got a ring." I said, "Well, that's a lemur." Yeah. And she said, "Well, he's saying it's named after you. Does that mean the lemur's called John? I said, no. No, that's because there is a species of lemur named after me.
Yes.
Which, of course, there's no way she would know that.
So
you say this and you think, how is this possible?
Yeah. And what are you talking to Graham about?
Oh, he's telling me that I've done a very, very good script and it's going to be very successful. He told me that.
You're consulting almost with him
Yes,
about the reworking of Fawlty Towers.
And it's really lovely because you kind of feel he's still there.
Yeah, yeah.
And I say goodbye to him with a smile on my face and just remember how fond I was of him. Because I think something happens when we die. Maybe not to all people, but to some people. And I think that's what I'm really most interested in now, because I'm near it myself. You know?
Well, how do you feel about death or dying? Do you think about it, or do you care?
I don't think I'm not frightened of the act of dying, because in the old days you were in a lot of pain when you died most of the time. Now with the drugs that you've got, you're not in pain, so I'm not frightened of that. But I'm frightened of losing. You know, when I die, I lose my daughters, I lose my wife, and that makes me sad.
Yes. I often think about something, if I could swerve a little bit to your mother. Was your mother Muriel?
Yes.
You said that her relationship with death was...
What?
Well, you described her as being not very interested in the world, I think was what you said.
No, she had no interest in the outside world at all.
I say this, I don't want to be disrespectful.
No.
But
it was appropriate to be disrespectful to my mother. I talk to her sometimes too, and she's very nice. She actually apologised at one point.
Did she? And what did she apologise for, John?
Well, she wasn't a terribly good mother emotionally. She was fantastic at food and darning and organisation. But she was such a warrior. You see, when a baby's born, the key thing, I think, is the connection with the mother. And it's fascinating, the research, because there's a kind of dance between the baby and the mother and their eyes. And they've tried experiments. In one experiment, they switched. The baby was watching mother on a live TV monitor right in front. And the mother was smiling. And then they just switched the picture and put up a picture of her at another point, still smiling. And the baby got very upset because she was no longer reacting to the baby, and the baby wasn't able to react to her.
Really?
So a smiling face was not enough. The point was the dance, that extraordinary deep level of connection between them. And I think if you get that with your mother, it gives you a lot of confidence in the world.
Yes.
And if you don't get it, for example, if your mother's very neurotic or an alcoholic and her mind is elsewhere, then you go through life with less confidence.
You said about your mum that she had lived through all these wars.
Oh, I say to her, well, you see, the odd thing was she was born in 1899 when Victoria was there, and she died in 2000. So her life was 101 years, spanning the 20th century. And what I said about her, I said, and so she lived through the First World War, the assassination of Archduke Ferdinand, Sarajevo, then the rise of Hitler and Stalin and Franco, and then the Second World War and the atomic bomb and the space age and the foundation of Israel. She lived through it all. And then I pause and I say, without really noticing any of it. And then there's one moment that happens in the audience and you say, you know, and somebody shouts out during that pause and completely torpedoes the joke. That's when you want to get out.
That's when you want it.
Down in the front row with a baseball bat.
You said she did die eventually.
Surely, that's right.
I've quoted that many times.
I love that line.
So if there's someone that beautifully used that word at the end.
Right.
She
Eventually.
Eventually. That's correct. But you know, when people are heckling in the crowd, notice Peter Kay particularly recently is getting really annoyed. And a lot of stand-up people and good guys, they're fed up with that messing in the crowd now.
Well, what I want to say to them is, look, I'm quite good at this comedy thing, and I spent a lot of time writing it and then rehearsing it and performing it. What do you really think are your chances of coming up something better than mine?
It's yeah.
And I say you're spoiling. It mustn't become between the two of you. I say do you realise you're spoiling the audience, spoiling the show for the rest of the audience? That's what shuts them up, because of course that's what they're doing.
Yeah. So they can.
Well, if you shout out in the middle of a joke, people don't hear don't hear the setup.
Yeah.
And if you try to repeat it, it doesn't work, because people are thinking, well, what happened? Oh, somebody shouted out.
Yeah. So they're right to call it out, really, and just say stop.
Oh, I think so. Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a certain kind of affectionate thing. There are some moments when you might almost invite it, but when someone's in the middle of a joke, to start shouting out because you just thought of something is an act of extraordinary stupidity.
I was talking to the Irish Prime Minister recently. And
Do you have a Prime Minister?
Oh, now, John.
I didn't know you were so up to date.
John, you are. You're a dinosaur.
Oh, I love the Irish, because you just. I'll tell you what it is. You like a bit of fun, and I arrived to do a speech in Dublin. And they took me from the plane and introduced me to the driver of the car. And I shook hands. I said, I understand you have an alcohol problem. I'd known him 3 seconds. And do you know what he says to me?
Go on.
He said, oh, no, Mr. Cleese, I spill very little when I'm driving. I mean, absolutely wonderful.
Yeah, I love that.
So you can tease them and they tease you back.
And you have to have the sense of humour with that.
Yeah.
But I was laughing. So the Prime Minister was saying that on his honeymoon many years ago, and there were a few people sitting around the table, and there was some strangers there, and there was a German, and his wife said to him, "Don't mention the war." And he's a historian, and all he could talk about was the war. And I'm laughing, going, that expression has, is from.
It's the highest compliment that anyone has ever paid me, to use those lines and Connie's lines in ordinary conversation.
Wow.
And it's passed into the language, and I love that. I'd much rather that than be in the Oxford Book of Humorous Quotations.
Yes, you like to hear it used in a
I
casual.
just love hearing. Yeah. There's one family told me that they play this extraordinarily obscure game of trying to mention a phrase from Fawlty Towers without anyone else in the family recognizing it.
That's
it's very sophisticated.
I like it. The Fawlty Towers at the stage show, let's talk a bit about that.
Yeah,
because
sure.
That's part of the reason you're here, because this stage show has just taken off. And I got to see it before Christmas.
Oh, you did? Good.
Not only did I get to see it, but thankfully, sometimes I have to go to stuff and it's fine. This is beyond fine. It's magnificent.
Oh, I'm very pleased.
John, I loved it so much. The acting, the set is beautiful.
Acting is awfully good.
The writing is...
Writing is pretty good too.
And beyond the beyonds. And the loyalty to the original... If I felt like I was in the studio audience watching you guys doing it first time around. It is a beautiful reproduction of what happened.
I'm very proud of it. And I can't remember how the script was put together, because we first started doing it in Australia before COVID. And then because of COVID, it all got closed down. And then we started again. And the moment that I was thrilled by was I was attending by remote, Zoom. I was attending auditions. And I could not believe the quality of the people. We had 3 Basils, 2 Sybils, we had 3 Manuels, and we had about 5 Pollys, and they were all good enough. You can take any of them, put them on. And I thought, there's no way this can't work.
Yes.
If the actors are this good with a funny script. But, there was a lot of doubt, because the people in charge, as you know, have no idea what they're doing.
Yes.
And most Phil McIntyre put Fawlty Towers on, said that most of the people were saying they weren't interested. The first thing they said is in John Cleese in it. And when he said, oh no, he's too old and doddery, they were lost interest. Yeah. So it was fascinating to see how few of them thought it would succeed and how wrong they were. And I don't say that in a triumphant say it. I say it because people need to realize that the people at the top have very little idea what they're doing.
Yes.
I mean, do you realize Life of Brian is now rated in these big surveys, international film critics, something like the 10th funniest film ever made? Yeah. We could not get $3 million to make it. Remarkable. So not a lot of money for a film. But every Hollywood studio passed on him.
Isn't that extraordinary? And look where it is now. What did William Goldman said? No one knows
Yes.
anything. No
I
one knows
knew
it.
Bill, and
Did
he
you?
wrote a wonderful book
Yeah.
called Adventures in the Screen Trade.
That's the one.
And he said nobody knows. And when he said
Anything.
it, everyone was shocked.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, naughty man.
The Emperor has many clothes.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
and then shortly afterwards, everyone said, well, yeah, she's right.
Yes. Yeah. Just to give credit to, it was Adam Jackson Smith I saw on stage playing the Basil Fawlty role, your own role. Paul Nicholas, of course, is the major. Beautiful casting there.
He's unbelievably funny.
Really,
He has my
funny.
favourite line in the whole show,
What's that?
which when Basil is asking him about the money, so he'll tell Mrs. Richardson it's Basil's because he won it on a horse. And there's this long pause, and he does it so wonderfully. He says, what was the question again?
But it's full of that. This is the thing. People, this show, by the way, is going on tour. If people want to know about it.
It's coming back in the West End first.
Yes.
It's been replaced for a few weeks by a show that they, made a commitment to.
Yes.
Which is apparently very good, and is I can't remember. It's
on Shaftesbury Avenue.
Shaftesbury
I pass it by
Avenue.
every day. Yeah.
What is it? Anyway, and that's coming off when it's been running for 14 weeks, and then we're coming in for 3 months, and then we're going.
And then you're on tour. Yeah.
So we're starting in end of September in Bromley.
You are.
And finishing in Dublin.
Oh, you're finishing in the board, gosh,
Yeah.
And they have a Taoiseach, a Prime Minister there now, and running water and electricity. You'll be glad
teacup?
to know.
What?
Here they are. This was this man.
Why don't you spell your names properly?
We do, they're not anagrams. The tour concludes the broadcast, July 2026. It is a beautiful show, and I don't recall laughing so much at a show.
But what was so interesting is people said, well, will people like it now?
Yes, yeah. Oh, you're talking about the language and all
Well,
of that?
yes, but is it old-fashioned? And the answer is, you want to go and look at Charlie Chaplin. It's pretty funny.
Yeah, Buster
Is he
Keaton.
old-fashioned? Yes,
Yeah.
He's old-fashioned and very funny.
Yeah.
Same with Marx Brothers and some of those great shows, like the Goon Show is still hilarious. Old-fashioned, yes, but very funny. What is kind of funny is funny.
Yes.
And it doesn't matter what the setting is if it's funny. And it's classic farce. And we used to have a lot of farce. Yeah. Brian Ricks, John Chapman's and Ray Cooney's shows.
Yes.
And then there was extraordinary successful farce by Michael Frayn called Noises Off. And then there was Two Men and a Governor. What's it called?
Yeah. And
then there's that extraordinary thing about Mormon, the Book of Mormon. This sort of huge, broad, hilarious farcical. And then they all say, oh, no, people don't want farce in the London Theatre anymore. And you want to say, hello?
What were they? And Operation Mincemeat's another very funny farce
Yes,
on the West End.
very good.
John, you've said twice since you came into the studio that, I'm a little old and dothery. You have the power of recall and an agility of mind. And
I'm fantastic.
You are. How are you feeling about the world?
Extraordinary. Sometimes I look in the mirror in the morning, I think, just how extraordinary human being you are. In fact, one day I actually fainted and banged my head.
So you were bowled over by yourself?
I was bowled over by my own importance.
Well, now we have something in common. So your daughter Camilla and yourself are writing is it a screen version, a reboot
it's
of Fawlty?
It's a TV version for America, and it's got a bit sidelined because of all the other things that are going on, like the need to earn a living. But we were doing that for Castle Rock, which had a very fine reputation.
And have you paid off all your alimony? Is that done now?
Oh, yes. No, I
thank
paid
God.
that. And that only took 7 years.
Yeah,
You see, what happened was when I had to pay her $20 million.
I know.
It's quite a lot considering we didn't have children and she didn't bring in any assets whatsoever. But anyway.
It's a big bill.
It was extraordinary. But I got back to England when I met my present wife.
Yes.
I shouldn't really say my present wife, but she's quite wonderful. Known as Fish. You know this?
No.
Oh, yeah. She gets up every morning and swims 2.5 miles.
Oh, crikey.
I know. So I call her Fish.
Why not?
And she's got she has a terrible, wicked sense of humour. I mean, her April Fool joke should be against the criminal law. She's just terrible. What am I talking about?
You were talking, yeah.
Yeah, I was talking about her. Why was that?
Because I was mentioning the alimony's paid off now.
Oh, yes. When I got back to England, and I still was paying this ex-wife $1 million a year for 7 years. And they said to me, yeah, no, but you have to earn $2 million. I said, what? They said, you have to earn $2 million, pay 50% to the government, and then pay the other. And I said, you mean I have to earn $2 million before I get to keep a penny? And they said, yes.
Yeah.
And so that's why I tried living abroad for a bit, as I thought maybe if I go to a tax haven, I can manage this. So instead of that, I had a nervous breakdown. That solved everything.
We end our conversation about finding that lovely psychology of comedy, in the sense that in the darkest corners, often the funniest moments.
Absolutely. Paddy Ashdown told me there was an old story about the Marines in the Second World War, when some of the Marines were getting dive bombed by British planes. The RAF got the wrong message. And one of them got very angry about being bombed by his own planes. And the officer said to him, if you can't take a joke, you shouldn't have joined up. And everybody laughed.
Yeah.
And that's what I notice about comedy. Is extraordinary how many people say to me, thank you for helping me through difficult times.
Yeah, for sure.
And people forget that when you laugh, it moves you to a different part of yourself, which is better at handling difficult things.
Yeah. Well, let me be one of those voices to thank you for making me laugh.
Well, I love saying that, because I think the people who are always worried about offence forget all the good effects that laughter has.
It's a true story. What a nice way to end our conversation. John Cleese, it's been a pleasure.
And I've quite enjoyed it.
Yeah, it was a solid 6 out of 10. But no, it's good to see. I hope life is good to you.
Yeah.
See you another time.
Well, if God will heal some of my minor injuries, I'll come in next year and tell you how it's doing on tour.
I'm in. That's great. John Cleese, our guest at the top of the tower today.